I feel so tall. This is great. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this year's Pappalardo Fellows Symposium. We're just going to get started right away. So let me introduce immediately. First, let me welcome back our former Pappalardo Fellow, Matthew Headrick, Professor of Physics at Brandeis, who is going to make some introductory remarks.
All right.
Sir.
Is my mic on? Sounds like it is. Oh, wow. OK. Thank you, Deepto. Thanks to Deepto and Carol for inviting me today. I always love coming back to these symposia whenever I have time to, which unfortunately is not every year. And thanks also for the free parking. That made me feel very special, seeing my name on that list next to Pappalardo's. So I was from one of the early cohorts. I started in 2003, which was maybe like the second or third year that the Pappalardo Fellowship existed. And at the time, it was sort of just getting off the ground. I mean, and some things were still being worked out. Some kinks were still being worked out. So I think my year, of course, they aim for 3 fellows each year. My year, I guess, I mean, they weren't sure like whether there was the name recognition or whether people knew about this Pappalardo thing or whatever. So I think just to be safe, they actually admitted 6, made offers to 6 people, expecting 3 to accept. Of course, obviously, all 6 of us came. So it was sort of an unusual case where MIT seems to have somewhat underestimated itself. So we had so there were 6 of us. It was a big group, and we had a great time. And of course, since then, that hasn't been an issue at all. Pappalardo is world-renowned name in the world of physics, and everybody knows what the Pappalardo Fellowship is about, and I think there's no problem at all attracting people to come and take this amazing fellowship. And I was looking, in preparing for this, I was just looking at the list of alumni on the website, and it's absolutely mind-blowing if you look at that list. It must be something like 90% of former Pappalardo Fellows are currently faculty at research institutions, which is just crazy. And if you look at the number of women faculty who are Pappalardo alumni, it's also mind-blowing. I counted, there's about 20 female Pappalardo alumni who are now physics faculty in the US. That must be, I mean, I don't know the number of faculty hired in the US in the last 20 years or the number of female faculty in physics, but I suspect it's not that much, it's not much more than 20. I mean, so I think the Pappalardo Fellowship must be feeding like an order 1 fraction, certainly feeding an order 1 fraction of the physics faculty, but especially female physics faculty. Which I know at my institution, that's certainly true, that an order 1 fraction of the hires we've made have been Pappalardo Fellows. But by the way, I mean, not to imply that, being physics faculty is kind of like the pinnacle of success or the only form of success that exists for somebody, who does a postdoc in physics. But at the same time, I think it's astonishing enough to raise the question of why. I mean, there are some obvious reasons that MIT is obviously an amazing place to do research, an amazing place to launch one's career, and so on. The people here are great. But I think part of it, and then of course part of it is a selection effect that the Pappalardo committee does a good job of picking people who are promising in terms of their future careers in physics, obviously. But I think there's something else to it, which is, at least in my experience and in my observation, which is a self-selection effect. People who tend to choose people who are offered Pappalardo fellowships have other choices typically, and they choose the Pappalardo. And I think this self-selection effect has to do with a very clever way that this fellowship is set up, which is a little bit unusual. Normally, like if a department gets a bunch of money to offer fellowships, they would kind of divvy the money up into the groups, and then the groups would hire postdocs, and then they would be called Pappalardo fellows or whatever. But that's not how it's done at MIT. it's the department that decides collectively who the fellows are going to be, who's going to get offers. And that means that the fellows have freedom. They have independence. And I think that somebody coming out of a PhD who is looking for a position where they will have freedom and independence is a good marker for somebody who's going to be successful, who's going to choose a faculty career and is going to be successful there. And I know that was the case for me. This was a big factor for me in choosing to come to MIT. Just the thought that I would not be beholden to any particular faculty member or even group, that I could decide to change fields if I wanted to do anything, and basically anything in science, have 3 full years of funding, was an amazing prospect. And it worked out, I mean, for me, certainly it was an inflection point in my career. I was, I had a great time as a grad student, but I felt a little more grown up. I was feeling like it was time for me to a little bit get out from under the shadow of my advisor. And I didn't want to just go join another group and then be doing what somebody else, however good that person might be and however amazing that work might be, was basically telling me to work on. And that's really how it worked out for me. That I had a great time here and interacted with everybody in the group. And I think I only wrote 1 paper during 3 years, actually, with an MIT faculty member during that time. And it's kind of like one piece of evidence for this, the importance of this kind of independence. So I was flattered last week to be mentioned in a Quanta magazine article. But the thing was, it wasn't about my latest work. What was mentioned was an article I wrote in 2005 when I was a Pappalardo fellow, actually. So first of all, that made me feel incredibly old. That I was being cited for work that was done almost 20 years ago. I mean, that's crazy. Like there are people who are less old than that. But also that work was the kind of thing that I think no responsible advisor would give their student or their postdoc to work on. It was a paper where that basically created the field of complex numerical relativity. It was something I did with Toby Wiseman, a postdoc at Harvard, and it was just this crazy idea we had, and we went ahead with it. So it's the kind of thing that I think you really gain from. It's unusual, it's special for this program. And I think it's a great benefit. There's I should mention a couple of other things that I think are special about the Pappalardo program and that make it particularly successful. I mean, one is, of course, the very personal approach that Neil and Jane take to the fellowship, taking ownership of it and getting to know. I mean, he's here now. I mean, this, every year he wants to know basically what he's getting for his money, which is good. And he's getting great things for it. But also he and Jane, want to know us as humans. They sort of welcome us into their family, which is really amazing. And it creates a kind of community of Pappalardo fellows, which I think is a huge plus. And then, of course, the real secret sauce here, obviously, is Carol, who's the one who makes everything work, and not just in the sense of like, of course, all the organizational stuff, which she does perfectly, but in a bigger and more important sense of, really caring about the program and caring about the people in it. And I mean, I remember I met Carol when I was, when I came to campus to interview, and obviously I was incredibly nervous, and and she just really like put me at ease, and made me feel welcome and so on, and that just didn't stop the whole time I was at MIT, and she's done she's done a tremendous amount behind the scenes in terms of thinking about and asking people, how can the program be made better? What's working? What can we improve? And so on and so forth. And really being a driving force within the department to make this program the best it can be. So I'll just finish. I think we should all thank Carol for the incredible work she does. And I know you didn't come here to hear me talk, so I think I'll cede the floor now to hear some good physics.
Matthew, thanks very much. Thanks very much.